Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag as he locked up his small auto repair shop. The sun was setting behind the industrial buildings of downtown Detroit, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He had been working late, again, trying to catch up on the mounting pile of repair orders that seemed to grow larger each day. His shop, Marcus's Motors, wasn't much to look at from the outside, but it had been his pride and joy for the past 15 years. As he walked toward his pickup truck, the sound of a sputtering engine caught his attention. A beaten-up Honda Civic was limping into the parking lot next to his shop, white smoke billowing from under its hood. The car jerked to a stop, and Marcus could hear the engine making concerning knocking sounds, even from where he stood. The driver's door creaked open, and out stepped a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. She wore scrubs that had seen better days, and her face showed the exhaustion that comes from long shifts and even longer worries. Her name was Sarah Chen, though Marcus didn't know that yet. What he could see was the frustration and desperation written across her features as she stared at her smoking car. Sarah kicked the front tire gently, more out of helplessness than anger. She pulled out her phone and Marcus could see her scrolling through what appeared to be a contacts list, her face falling with each swipe. She made a call, waited, then hung up when it went to voicemail. Then another call, with the same result. Marcus had already started walking over before he fully realized what he was doing. There was something about the woman's defeated posture that reminded him of his own mother years ago, when their family car had broken down and they couldn't afford repairs. His mother had stood in much the same way, shoulders slumped, wondering how she would get to work the next day to support her 3 children. "Excuse me?" Marcus called out as he approached. "Looks like you're having some car trouble." Sarah looked up startled. She had been so focused on her phone that she hadn't noticed the man walking toward her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with grease stains on his work shirt and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Despite his imposing size, there was something gentle about his approach that put her slightly at ease. "Oh yes," Sarah said, gesturing helplessly at her car. "It just started smoking and making these awful noises. I think it's finally given up on me." She let out a bitter laugh. "Perfect timing, as usual." Marcus nodded toward the still-smoking hood. "Mind if I take a look? I'm a mechanic. That's my shop right there." He pointed to the small building behind them, with its hand-painted sign and modest storefront. Sarah's eyes lit up with hope, then dimmed just as quickly. "I appreciate the offer, but I should probably be upfront with you. I don't have much money right now. Actually, I don't have any money right now." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm a nursing student, and between tuition and rent, I'm pretty much tapped out. I was hoping maybe it was something simple I could fix myself, but..." She trailed off, looking at the smoke still rising from her engine. Marcus could hear the story in her silence. He'd seen it before. Hard-working people trying to get by, one car repair away from having their lives turned upside down. "Let's just see what we're dealing with first," Marcus said, walking toward the front of her car. "Pop the hood for me." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then reached inside and pulled the hood release. Marcus lifted the hood and immediately began his assessment. The radiator was cracked, coolant had leaked all over the engine block, and from the looks of it, the water pump was failing too. It wasn't the worst he'd ever seen, but it wasn't good news for someone with no money to spare. "How bad is it?" Sarah asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer wouldn't be what she wanted to hear. Marcus straightened up and wiped his hands on his rag again. "Well, you've got a cracked radiator and your water pump is going out. The good news is it's fixable. The less good news is it's going to run you about $400 in parts and labor." Sarah's face fell. She leaned back against her car and closed her eyes. $400 might as well be $4,000 right now. She opened her eyes and looked at Marcus. "I'm sorry I wasted your time. I'll figure something out." But Marcus wasn't walking away. Instead, he was looking thoughtful, as if working through a problem in his head. Sarah had reminded him of something his grandmother used to say. "When you have the ability to help someone and you don't, you rob yourself of the chance to be part of something bigger than yourself." "Tell you what," Marcus said finally. "I don't usually do this, but I can see you're in a tough spot. Let me take care of this for you. No charge." Sarah stared at him as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. I'm sorry, what? I'll fix your car tonight if you want. I've got the parts in my shop and it'll only take me a couple hours. Consider it a good deed. I can't let you do that, Sarah protested. That's $400 worth of work. You don't even know me. Why would you? Because someone did something similar for my mom when I was 12, Marcus interrupted. Our car broke down, and we couldn't afford to fix it. She needed that car to get to her 2 jobs, and we were about to lose everything. A mechanic named Joe fixed it for free. Told my mom to pay it forward someday. He shrugged. I guess this is me paying it forward. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had been so focused on trying to solve her problems alone that she had forgotten there were still good people in the world. I don't know what to say. This is incredibly generous, but I have to find some way to pay you back. Marcus shook his head. The only payment I want is for you to promise me something. When you're in a position to help someone else someday, and you will be, you help them. That's how this works. As the evening darkness settled around them, Marcus rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Sarah insisted on helping, holding the flashlight and handing him tools. As they worked together under the hood of her car, she told him about her nursing program, about the long hours at the hospital where she worked part-time, about her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse. Marcus listened as he worked, occasionally asking questions or sharing stories of his own. There was something peaceful about the rhythm of the work, the quiet conversation, and the sense that they were both part of something meaningful happening in an otherwise ordinary evening. 2 hours later, Marcus wiped his hands one final time and closed the hood of Sarah's Honda. The engine was running smoothly now, no more smoke, no more concerning noises. Just the steady hum of a well-maintained motor that would serve its owner, faithfully for many more miles. Try starting it up, Marcus said, stepping back from the car. Sarah slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started immediately, running quieter than it had in months. She pressed the accelerator gently, listening to the smooth response. When she stepped out of the car, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I can't believe you did this, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You don't understand what this means to me. Without this car, I can't get to work, I can't get to school, I can't get to my clinical rotations at the hospital. You just saved my entire future. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the physical exertion of the repair work. This was why he had become a mechanic in the first place, not just to fix machines, but to fix the problems that broken machines created in people's lives. Like I said, just pay it forward when you can, Marcus replied. And drive safely. If you have any problems with it, you know where to find me. Sarah impulsively reached out and hugged him. Thank you, Marcus, I mean it, thank you so much. After Sarah drove away, waving from her window as she pulled onto the main street, Marcus finished cleaning up his tools. He was tired but satisfied as he finally made his way to his truck. It had been a long day, but it had ended well. He had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to set in motion a series of events that would change his life forever. The next morning started like any other. Marcus arrived at his shop at 7 o'clock, unlocked the doors, and began preparing for another day of work. He had 3 cars scheduled for oil changes, a transmission repair, and a brake job that he hoped to finish before closing time. The morning passed quietly, with the usual rhythm of work that Marcus found comforting. Around noon, Marcus was under the hood of a Ford pickup when he heard a car pull into his lot. He emerged from under the hood, expecting to see one of his regular customers. Instead, he saw a sleek black Mercedes sedan parked outside his shop. The car looked like it belonged in a luxury dealership showroom, not in the modest parking lot of a neighborhood repair shop. A well-dressed man in an expensive suit stepped out of the Mercedes. He was probably in his 50s, with silver hair, and the kind of confident bearing that suggested he was used to being in charge. He looked around the shop with an appraising eye, taking in the simple tools, the modest workspace, and Marcus himself, still wearing yesterday's work clothes. Are you Marcus? The man asked as he approached. That's me, Marcus replied, wiping his hands on his rag out of habit. What can I do for you? The man extended his hand. My name is Robert Chen. I believe you helped my daughter Sarah last night. Marcus felt a jolt of surprise. He shook Robert's hand, noting the firm grip and the expensive watch on the man's wrist. Sarah's your daughter? She didn't mention... He trailed off, realizing that Sarah had never mentioned her family at all during their conversation the night before. She called me this morning, Robert continued. Told me about what you did for her. How you fixed her car for free, wouldn't take any payment, told her to pay it forward. He paused, studying Marcus's face. She also told me she tried to explain that she couldn't afford to pay you, and you fixed it anyway. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't sure where this conversation was headed, but something in Robert's tone made him nervous. Look, if she's in some kind of trouble for accepting help, that's on me. I offered. She didn't ask for anything. Robert held up a hand. You misunderstand me. Sarah's not in trouble, quite the opposite. He looked around the shop again. My daughter has been insisting on paying her own way through nursing school. We've had many discussions about it. She's determined to make it on her own, without any help from her family. That's admirable, Marcus said, though he was beginning to get a clearer picture of the situation. It is, Robert agreed. But it's also been difficult to watch her struggle when we could easily help her. She's been working part-time at the hospital, living in a tiny apartment, driving that old car that breaks down every few months. All because she wants to prove she can do it herself. Marcus was starting to understand why Sarah had looked so defeated the night before, and why his offer of help had meant so much to her. She's got spirit, he said. You should be proud of her. I am, Robert said quietly. More than she knows. But what you did last night, you showed her that accepting help doesn't make her weak, that sometimes good people help each other just because they can. She's been crying happy tears all morning. The two men stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Robert spoke again. Sarah told me you said someone helped your mother when you were young and you were paying it forward, Ma'am, that's right. A mechanic named Joe. He fixed our car when we couldn't afford it, told my mom to pass the kindness along someday. Robert nodded slowly. Well, I'd like to pass some kindness along too, if you'll let me. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. I'm the president of Chen Industries. We're a logistics company. We move goods all over the Midwest. We have a fleet of about 200 vehicles, trucks, vans, service vehicles, executive cars. Marcus looked at the business card, noting the impressive company logo and the downtown address in one of the city's most expensive office buildings. That's quite an operation. It is, and those vehicles need maintenance, regular service, repairs, everything you can imagine. We currently have contracts with 3 different service centers around the city. Robert paused. I'd like to offer you an exclusive contract to maintain our entire fleet. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. A contract like that would transform his small shop overnight. Mr. Chen, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm just one guy with a small shop. I couldn't handle that kind of volume. That's where the second part of my offer comes in, Robert said. I'm prepared to provide you with a loan to expand your operation. New equipment, additional space, hiring mechanics, whatever you need to handle our business and grow yours. Marcus stared at the man in disbelief. Why would you do this? I helped your daughter, yes, but this is life-changing money you're talking about. Robert smiled, and for the first time since he'd arrived, his formal demeanor softened. Because yesterday, a stranger helped my daughter when she needed it most. He didn't know who she was or where she came from. He just saw someone in trouble and decided to help. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person he is. But I can't accept this, Marcus protested. It's too much. I fixed a radiator and a water pump. This is me paying it forward, Robert interrupted, echoing Marcus's own words from the night before. Sarah told me what you said about Joe the mechanic helping your mother. Well, someone helped me get started in business 30 years ago when I had nothing but an idea and determination. I've been looking for the right opportunity to pass that forward. Marcus looked around his small shop, imagining what it could become with the resources Robert was offering. He thought about the mechanics he could hire, the families he could support, the customers he could help. But more than that, He thought about the chain of kindness that had started with a mechanic named Joe and had somehow led to this moment. "There is one condition," Robert added. "I want you to promise me that as your business grows, you'll continue to help people who can't afford to pay. Keep some time in your schedule for folks like my daughter was yesterday, people who just need someone to believe in them." Marcus stood in stunned silence, Robert Chen's business card trembling slightly in his hand. The magnitude of what was being offered seemed impossible to comprehend. An exclusive maintenance contract for 200 vehicles, plus a loan to expand his operation. It was the kind of opportunity that most small business owners could only dream about. "I need some time to think about this," Marcus said finally. It's overwhelming." Robert nodded understandingly. "Of course, take all the time you need, but I hope you'll seriously consider it. My daughter described you as someone who believes in doing the right thing even when it's difficult. That's exactly the kind of partner I want for my business." After Robert left, Marcus spent the rest of the day in a daze. He went through the motions of his scheduled repairs, but his mind kept wandering to the conversation. By closing time, he had made his decision. He called the number on Robert's business card. "Mr. Chen, this is Marcus. I've thought about your offer, and if you're serious about it, I'd like to accept." 2 weeks later, Marcus found himself standing in what used to be the empty warehouse next to his original shop. The space was bustling with activity as contractors installed new equipment and expanded the work area. Robert had been true to his word, providing not just the promised loan, but also connecting Marcus with suppliers, equipment dealers, and even helping him navigate the paperwork for expanding his business. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a simple 2-bay shop was becoming a full-service automotive center, with 8 work bays, state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment, and space for a team of mechanics. Marcus had hired 3 experienced technicians and was in the process of interviewing candidates for 2 more positions. But the most meaningful addition to his shop wasn't the new equipment or the expanded space. It was the sign that now hung near the entrance. "Free repairs every Tuesday for those who need it most. Pay it forward when you can." The Tuesday program had been Marcus's idea, but Robert had enthusiastically supported it, even agreeing to sponsor the cost of parts and materials. Every Tuesday, Marcus and his team would set aside time to help people who couldn't afford automotive repairs, but desperately needed them. Sarah had been his first Tuesday customer, not because she needed the service anymore, but because she wanted to volunteer. She had graduated from nursing school and accepted a position at the Children's Hospital downtown, but she still found time every Tuesday to help at the shop, offering assistance to customers and sharing her own story of how kindness had changed her life. On this particular Tuesday, about 3 months after Marcus had first helped Sarah, the shop was busier than usual. Word about the free repair program had spread through the community, and Marcus was working on a single mother's minivan while his team handled other cars. The van needed new brakes, a repair that would have cost the woman nearly $500 at most shops. As Marcus finished bleeding the brake lines, he noticed a commotion outside. Sarah, who had been helping organize the waiting area, came running over to him. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, her voice filled with excitement and something that sounded like disbelief. Marcus wiped his hands and followed Sarah outside. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. The street in front of his shop, which normally held a few modest cars belonging to customers, was lined with an impressive array of luxury vehicles. Mercedes sedans, BMW SUVs, Audis, Lexuses, and even what looked like a Bentley were parked along both sides of the street. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, looking around in confusion. Before Sarah could answer, people began getting out of the luxury cars. They were a diverse group, men and women of various ages, all well-dressed and carrying themselves with the confidence that comes with success. But what struck Marcus most was that several of them looked familiar, though he couldn't quite place where he might have seen them before. A woman in an elegant business suit approached him first. "Are you Marcus?" she asked with a warm smile. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm the CEO of Walsh Financial Group." She gestured toward the other people who were now gathering around them. "We're all here because of what you've been doing." Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him, still confused about what was happening. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I understand. A man in his 40s stepped forward. I'm David Rodriguez, owner of Rodriguez Construction. About 6 weeks ago, you fixed my employee Maria's car for free on a Tuesday. Maria is my best foreman, but she was about to quit because her car died and she couldn't afford to fix it. Without transportation, she couldn't get to job sites. I remember Maria, Marcus said, beginning to understand. Sweet lady. Her car just needed a new alternator. That alternator saved her job, David continued. But more than that, your kindness inspired her to share her story with me. Maria told me about this place, about what you're doing every Tuesday, about how you told her to pay it forward. He paused, looking around at the other business owners. It got me thinking about ways I could pay it forward too. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward again. David called me because he knew I was looking for ways to give back to the community. When I heard about your Tuesday program, I was intrigued, so I started asking around, reaching out to other business owners. And we all discovered that you've helped someone we know, said another voice from the crowd. Marcus turned to see an older African-American woman approaching. I'm Dr. Patricia Johnson. I run the community clinic on 5th Street. You fixed my nurse practitioner's car last month. Without that repair, she would have had to miss work, and we were already short-staffed. More voices joined in, each person sharing a connection to someone Marcus had helped. A restaurant owner whose delivery driver had received free brake repairs. A school principal whose teacher had been able to keep coming to work thanks to a new transmission. A small business owner whose key employee had avoided losing her job because her car was running again. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the stories, by the realization that his simple acts of kindness had rippled out through the community in ways he had never imagined. I'm honored that you all came out here, he said, but I'm not sure what this is all about. Jennifer Walsh smiled. We're here because we want to formalize something. We've been talking among ourselves about the impact you're having on this community. The people you help on Tuesdays don't just get their cars fixed. They keep their jobs, they can take their kids to school, they can get to medical appointments, they can maintain their dignity. David Rodriguez nodded. So we've decided to create something we're calling the Pay It Forward Fund. Each of our businesses is contributing money to sponsor your Tuesday program, but we also want to expand it. Dr. Johnson stepped forward with a folder in her hands. We're proposing to fund a full-time position for someone to coordinate community outreach, to help connect people who need automotive help with your Tuesday program. We also want to provide funding for emergency repairs, situations where someone can't wait until Tuesday. Marcus felt his knees go weak. He looked around at all these successful people, all these luxury cars, all this attention focused on his small shop and his simple idea of helping others. I don't know what to say, he managed. Say yes, Sarah said quietly from beside him. She had tears in her eyes as she watched the scene unfolding. Say yes to making the circle even bigger. Marcus thought about Joe, the mechanic who had helped his mother so many years ago. He thought about that chain of kindness that had led him to help Sarah, which had led to Robert Chen's business partnership, which had enabled the Tuesday program, which had now somehow inspired all these successful people to want to help even more. Yes, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. Yes, let's see how big we can make this circle. The Pay It Forward Fund transformed not just Marcus's shop, but the entire neighborhood. Within 6 months of that remarkable day when dozens of luxury cars had lined the street, Marcus found himself running what had become the largest community automotive assistance program in the city. The fund had grown beyond even the initial organizers' expectations, with new businesses and individuals joining every month. Lisa Martinez had been hired as the Community Outreach Coordinator, a position that turned out to be far more complex and rewarding than anyone had initially imagined. Lisa herself had been a beneficiary of the Tuesday program, when Marcus had repaired her car so she could continue her job search after being laid off from a factory. Now she worked full-time helping others navigate the same kinds of challenges she had faced. The emergency repair program had proven especially valuable. Just the previous week, Lisa had coordinated help for a man whose car had broken down on his way to a job interview. The interview was for a position he desperately needed, and missing it would have meant losing his apartment. Thanks to the emergency fund, Marcus's team had been able to repair the man's fuel pump within 2 hours. The man got the job, and had already started paying into the fund himself, contributing what he could to help others. But the program's impact went far beyond automotive repairs. Dr. Patricia Johnson had been right when she'd predicted that fixing people's cars would have broader effects on the community. Children were getting to school more consistently. Parents were able to maintain steady employment. Elderly residents could keep their medical appointments. The ripple effects seemed to touch every aspect of community life. Marcus stood in his expanded shop on a Thursday morning, watching his team of 8 mechanics working on various vehicles. 3 of the cars belonged to paying customers from Robert Chen's business. 2 were part of the regular Tuesday program that had been moved to accommodate emergency repairs, and 3 were from the emergency fund. It was exactly the kind of balance he had hoped to achieve. Sarah had stopped by during her lunch break from the hospital, something she did frequently. She had become an unofficial spokesperson for the program, often speaking at community events about her experience and encouraging others to both seek help when they needed it and contribute when they could. "You know what I love most about what this has become?" Sarah asked as she watched the bustling activity around them. "What's that?" Marcus replied, looking up from the invoice he was reviewing. "It's not charity anymore. It's community." She gestured toward a woman who was waiting while her car was being repaired. "Mrs. Rodriguez there got help with her transmission last month. Now she volunteers every Tuesday, translating for Spanish-speaking customers. And her son Tommy, who's in high school, has started coming in after school to learn basic automotive skills." Marcus followed Sarah's gaze and smiled. Tommy Rodriguez was indeed there, eagerly watching one of the mechanics change oil in a customer's car. The teenager had shown real aptitude for automotive work, and Marcus had been thinking about offering him a part-time position when he graduated. "And look over there," Sarah continued, pointing to another area of the shop where Jennifer Walsh was talking with Lisa Martinez and Dr. Johnson. 3 successful women who might never have met each other, now working together on expanding the program to other neighborhoods. The expansion was Jennifer's latest project. The Pay It Forward Fund had grown so large that the organizers were exploring ways to replicate the model in other parts of the city. Jennifer had been meeting with automotive shop owners, community leaders, and potential business sponsors to create similar programs elsewhere. Marcus was pulled from his observations by the sound of a familiar voice. Robert Chen had arrived for his monthly check-in, something he insisted on doing even though his company's account was running smoothly. But Marcus suspected these visits had less to do with business oversight and more to do with Robert's genuine interest in seeing the program succeed. "How are things going, Marcus?" Robert asked, shaking hands warmly. "Better than I could have ever imagined," Marcus replied honestly. "We helped 37 families last month, and the emergency fund handled 12 urgent situations. But the best part is seeing how many of the people we've helped have found ways to give back." Robert nodded approvingly. "That's the key to making it sustainable. When people contribute back into the system that helped them, it becomes self-reinforcing." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the shop entrance. A local television news crew was setting up equipment, and Marcus could see a reporter adjusting her appearance in a small mirror. Lisa Martinez hurried over to them. "Marcus, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but Channel 7 wants to do a story about the program. Apparently someone nominated you for their Community Heroes segment." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had always been uncomfortable with publicity, preferring to work quietly behind the scenes. "Lisa, I don't think I'm the right person to be on television. Maybe Jennifer or Dr. Johnson could speak for the program?" "Actually," Sarah interjected, "I think you're exactly the right person. People need to see that this all started with one person deciding to help another person. That's a message everyone can relate to." Before Marcus could protest further, the reporter approached them. She was a young woman with bright eyes and an enthusiastic manner. "Mr. Marcus, I'm Amanda Rivera from Channel 7 News. We'd love to talk with you about the incredible work you're doing here." Despite his nervousness, Marcus found himself agreeing to the interview. As the camera crew set up their equipment, Amanda explained that they had received multiple calls about the program, including one from the mayor's office suggesting it as a model for other cities. The interview itself was less intimidating than Marcus had expected. Amanda asked thoughtful questions about how the program had started, how it had grown, and what impact it was having on the community. Marcus found himself telling the story naturally, starting with Joe, the mechanic who had helped his mother, and following the chain of kindness through to the present day. What would you say to other business owners who might be watching this and wondering if they could start something similar in their communities? Amanda asked. Marcus thought for a moment. I'd say don't wait for the perfect plan or the perfect moment. Just start with one act of kindness. Help one person who needs it. The rest will grow from there if it's meant to. After the news crew left, Marcus found himself surrounded by the various people who had made the program possible. Robert Chen and his daughter Sarah, Jennifer Walsh and the other business owners, Dr. Johnson, Lisa Martinez, and several of the families who had been helped by the program and had stayed to watch the interview. You know what this means, don't you? Jennifer said with a grin. Once this airs tonight, we're going to get calls from all over the country. People wanting to know how to start their own programs. The thought was both exciting and overwhelming. Marcus had never set out to start a movement. He had simply wanted to help one person, the same way Joe had helped his mother all those years ago. But as he looked around at the faces of all the people whose lives had been touched by what had started as a simple act of kindness, Marcus realized that maybe that's how all the best movements begin. One person helping another and then another, until the circle grows so large that it encompasses an entire community and eventually reaches even further beyond. The television segment aired on a Tuesday evening, and by Wednesday morning Marcus's phone hadn't stopped ringing. The story had been picked up by the network's national feed, and calls were coming in from Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, and even as far away as California and Texas. Everyone wanted to know how to start a similar program in their community. Lisa Martinez had arrived at work to find her voicemail completely full and her email inbox overflowing with messages. Marcus, I think we need to talk about getting some help with this, she said, holding up a stack of printed emails. I've got inquiries from over 40 different cities just from yesterday. The attention was both gratifying and overwhelming. Marcus had always been most comfortable working with his hands, solving mechanical problems that had clear solutions. Managing a national phenomenon was entirely different, and he wasn't sure he was equipped for it. The solution came from an unexpected source. David Rodriguez, the construction company owner who had been one of the original Pay It Forward Fund organizers, approached Marcus with an idea. My company has experience managing large projects, David explained. What if we created a non-profit organization to handle the administrative side of expanding this program? You could focus on what you do best, running the automotive program, while a dedicated team handles the inquiries, develops implementation guides, and helps other communities get started. Within a month, the Pay It Forward Automotive Foundation was officially established. Jennifer Walsh had agreed to serve as the board president, bringing her business expertise to the organization. Dr. Johnson joined as vice president, focusing on community health initiatives. David Rodriguez became the treasurer, and Sarah Chen, now a full-time pediatric nurse but still passionate about the program, agreed to serve as secretary. Marcus remained the foundation's spokesperson and chief advisor, but the day-to-day management of expansion requests was handled by a small staff working out of donated office space in Jennifer's building downtown. The foundation developed comprehensive guides for starting automotive assistance programs, created training materials for community outreach coordinators, and even established a network for sharing resources between different programs. The expansion was remarkable. Within 6 months, similar programs were operating in 15 cities across the Midwest and South. Each program was adapted to local needs and resources, but they all shared the core principle that had started everything: helping people in need, with the expectation that they would help others when they were able. The success stories began pouring in from around the country. A program in Memphis had helped a veteran get his truck repaired so he could start a lawn care business. In Phoenix, a single mother had been able to keep her job at a hospital because volunteers had fixed her car's air conditioning during the height of summer. In rural North Carolina, a program focused on helping farmers keep their equipment running during critical planting and harvest seasons. But perhaps the most meaningful development was happening right at home in Detroit. Tommy Rodriguez, the teenager who had been learning automotive skills at Marcus's shop, had just graduated from high school and been accepted into a community college automotive technology program. The Pay It Forward Foundation had established a scholarship fund to help young people like Tommy pursue careers in automotive service. "You know what I realized yesterday?" Tommy said to Marcus as they worked together on a transmission repair. "This whole program is like a transmission. All these different parts working together, transferring power from one place to another, making the whole system run better." Marcus smiled at the analogy. Tommy had a natural talent for understanding both the mechanical and philosophical aspects of what they were doing. The young man had become something of a symbol for the program's long-term impact, not just helping people in crisis, but creating pathways for the next generation to build careers around helping others. The scholarship fund had grown beyond Tommy's individual case. Local trade schools and community colleges had partnered with the foundation to create pathways for young people interested in automotive careers. The program emphasized not just technical skills, but also the service mindset that Marcus embodied, the understanding that fixing cars was really about fixing lives. One particularly memorable day came when Marcus received an unexpected visitor. An elderly man walked into the shop, moving slowly but with obvious determination. He was well into his 70s, with weathered hands and the kind of bearing that suggested a lifetime of hard work. "Are you Marcus?" the man asked. "Yes, sir. How can I help you?" The man extended his hand. "My name is Joe Kowalski. I think you might have heard of me." Marcus felt the world stop for a moment. Joe, the mechanic who had helped his mother 30 years ago. The man whose single act of kindness had set in motion the chain of events that had led to everything. Sarah's car, Robert Chen's partnership, the Pay It Forward Fund, and now programs helping thousands of people across the country. "Joe," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I can't believe it's really you." Joe smiled, and Marcus could see the same kindness in his eyes that his mother had described so many years ago. "I saw you on the news. Took me a while to make the connection, but when you mentioned a mechanic named Joe who helped your mother, well, I remember that day." "Your mother? She was so worried about how she was going to get to work, how she was going to take care of her boys." The two men stood looking at each other, connected by a moment that had happened decades ago, but had never really ended. Other people in the shop began to notice the emotional intensity of their conversation, and work gradually stopped as mechanics and customers alike sensed they were witnessing something significant. "I want you to know," Joe continued, "what you said about paying it forward. I didn't come up with that idea. I learned it from someone else, a mechanic who helped me when I was just starting out and didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. His name was Frank Petrosky, and he told me the same thing. Help others when you can and ask them to do the same." Marcus felt a profound sense of connection, not just to Joe, but to this invisible chain of people who had chosen kindness over indifference, generosity over self-interest. "How far back does it go?" he asked. "I don't know," Joe admitted. "But I'd guess it goes back a lot further than either of us realizes. Good people helping other good people, one person at a time." Sarah, who had arrived for her regular visit, overheard the conversation and approached them. When Marcus introduced her to Joe, she immediately understood the significance of the moment. "Mr. Kowalski," she said, "do you realize that by helping Marcus's mother, you started something that has now helped thousands of people across the country?" Joe shook his head in amazement. "When I fixed that woman's car all those years ago, I was just trying to help one family get through a tough time. I never imagined it would lead to anything like this." The moment was interrupted by Lisa Martinez, who approached with her usual energy but stopped short when she sensed the gravity of the conversation. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but, Marcus, you need to see this." She handed him a tablet displaying a news article. The headline read, "Pay It Forward Automotive Programs Now Operating in Over 100 Cities Nationwide." The article detailed how the foundation's model had been adopted, not just by individual communities, but by several national automotive chains who had implemented their own versions of the program. 100 cities. Marcus said, looking at Joe. All because you helped my mom. Joe's eyes filled with tears. All because people like you and Sarah and all these other folks decided that helping each other was worth doing. He looked around the bustling shop, taking in the signs about the Tuesday program, the volunteers helping customers, the young people learning automotive skills. This is what community is supposed to look like. The day took on a celebratory atmosphere as word spread through the shop about Joe's identity. Customers and volunteers gathered to hear him share stories about the old days of automotive repair, when mechanics knew their customers personally and often extended credit or free services to families in need. The thing is, Joe explained to the gathered crowd, what Marcus has built here isn't really new. It's how things used to work in neighborhoods everywhere. People looked out for each other. If your car broke down and you couldn't afford to fix it, your mechanic would figure something out because he knew you were good for it eventually, or because he knew you'd help someone else when you could. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. It had started with his desire to honor Joe's original kindness to his mother. It had grown through his meeting with Sarah, expanded through Robert Chen's business partnership, and exploded into something national through the dedication of community leaders and the power of media attention. But at its core, it was still the same simple principle Joe had taught his mother decades ago. When you have the ability to help someone, you help them, and you ask them to do the same for someone else when they can. The circle had grown far larger than Marcus had ever imagined possible, but it was still fundamentally about one person helping another person, one act of kindness at a time. 2 years after Joe Kowalski's unexpected visit, Marcus found himself standing before a crowd of nearly 500 people in the Detroit Convention Center. The occasion was the second annual Pay It Forward Automotive Foundation Conference, bringing together program coordinators, mechanics, business sponsors, and community leaders from across North America. The growth had been exponential. What had started as a single Shops Tuesday program was now operating in over 300 cities in the United States and had spread internationally to Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia. The foundation estimated that their network of programs had helped over 50,000 families maintain their transportation, which translated into preserved jobs, continued education, maintained healthcare access, and countless other positive outcomes. But numbers, Marcus had learned, only told part of the story. The real story was in the faces he saw in the audience. People whose lives had been changed not just by receiving help, but by becoming part of something larger than themselves. In the front row sat the original organizers of the Detroit program. Robert Chen and Sarah, now married to a fellow nurse and mother of a 1-year-old daughter, had remained deeply involved in the foundation's work. Jennifer Walsh had taken a leave of absence from her financial services company to serve as the foundation's full-time executive director. Dr. Patricia Johnson had helped establish a partnership with medical schools to train future healthcare providers in understanding the connection between transportation access and health outcomes. Tommy Rodriguez, now in his second year of automotive technology school, had developed an internship program that placed students from technical schools in Pay It Forward locations around the country. The program not only gave young people valuable work experience, but also ensured that the service-oriented culture of the movement was being passed on to the next generation of mechanics. Joe Kowalski, now 81 years old but still sharp and engaged, had become something of a celebrity within the movement. He traveled to program openings when his health permitted, sharing the historical perspective that reminded everyone that community mutual aid wasn't a new invention, but a renewal of older traditions. As Marcus looked out at the assembled crowd, he was struck by how diverse it had become. There were mechanics in work clothes sitting next to corporate executives in suits. Social workers shared tables with automotive parts suppliers. High school students attending with their technical education programs sat alongside retired volunteers who had found new purpose in helping others. The conference had become an annual opportunity to share best practices, celebrate successes, and tackle the challenges that came with rapid growth. This year's theme was Building Sustainable Communities of Care, reflecting the foundation's evolution from emergency assistance toward longer-term community development. Marcus's keynote address was titled From One Car to One Movement, and he had spent weeks preparing what he wanted to say. But standing at the podium, looking out at all these people who had committed themselves to helping others, he set aside his prepared remarks. "I want to start by telling you about a conversation I had yesterday," Marcus began. "A young woman called our Detroit office. Her name was Elena, and she was crying so hard that Lisa, our coordinator, could barely understand what she was saying. Elena's car had broken down on her way to the hospital where her daughter was having surgery. She was stuck on the freeway 40 miles from the hospital with no money for a tow truck and no way to get to her child." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Within 30 minutes, we had a volunteer tow truck driver on the way to Elena's location. One of our partner shops agreed to look at her car immediately, even though it was after hours. The problem turned out to be a broken serpentine belt, a $15 part that took 20 minutes to install. Elena made it to the hospital, in time to be with her daughter through the surgery. Marcus paused, letting the story sink in. Now I could tell you about the hundreds of similar stories we've handled this year. I could share statistics about the economic impact we're having, or the partnerships we've formed, or the programs we're launching next year. But what I really want to talk about is what Elena said at the end of that phone call yesterday. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. She said, "I don't understand why strangers would help me like this. I don't know how to thank you." And Lisa told her the same thing I learned 30 years ago from a mechanic named Joe. She said, "The way you thank us is by helping someone else when you're able to. That's how this works." Marcus could see nods of recognition throughout the audience. This was the core philosophy that united everyone in the room. "What we've built together isn't really about automotive repair," Marcus continued. "It's about remembering that we're all connected to each other, that your success and my success and Elena's success are all tied together. When we help someone keep their car running, we're helping them maintain their independence, their dignity, their ability to care for their families." The applause was spontaneous and sustained. Marcus waited for it to quiet before continuing. "I've been thinking a lot lately about legacy. What do we want to leave behind? What kind of world do we want our children to inherit? I think the answer is a world where people look out for each other, where kindness isn't unusual but ordinary, where helping someone in need isn't newsworthy because it happens every day." He gestured toward the audience. "Every person in this room is proof that this vision isn't naive or unrealistic. You've all seen how powerful it can be when people decide to care for each other. You've seen communities transform when neighbors start acting like neighbors again." Marcus thought about his own transformation from a solitary shop owner to someone who had inadvertently helped create a movement. The journey had taught him that leadership wasn't about having all the answers or being the smartest person in the room. It was about being willing to take the first step and then trusting others to take the steps that followed. "The foundation has asked me to announce our goals for the next 5 years, Marcus said, pulling out a sheet of paper. "We want to be operating in 1,000 cities by 2030. We want to help 250,000 families annually. We want to train 10,000 young people in service-oriented automotive careers." The audience buzzed with excitement at the ambitious targets. "But here's what I think our real goal should be," Marcus continued, setting the paper aside. "I think our goal should be to make ourselves unnecessary. I think we should work toward a world where programs like ours don't need to exist because communities naturally take care of each other. Where every mechanic, every business owner, every person with the ability to help sees that as a normal part of life." The room was quiet again, people absorbing the paradox of working to eliminate the need for their own work. Until that day comes, we'll keep doing what we do. We'll keep fixing cars and fixing lives. We'll keep building bridges between people who have resources and people who need them. We'll keep proving that kindness is contagious, that generosity multiplies, and that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. As Marcus concluded his remarks and stepped away from the podium, the standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but what moved him most wasn't the applause from the crowd. It was seeing Joe Kowalski in the front row, tears streaming down his weathered face, nodding his approval. After the conference ended and the crowds dispersed, Marcus found himself back, in his original shop, now just one part of a much larger operation but still the heart of everything they did. It was a Tuesday evening, and the day's volunteer program had just wrapped up. They had helped 12 families that day, including a grandmother who needed her car repaired so she could continue taking her grandchildren to school while their mother worked double shifts as a nurse. Sarah stopped by, as she often did, bringing her toddler daughter to see Uncle Marcus. As they watched the little girl play with toy cars in the waiting area, Sarah asked the question that had been on both their minds since the conference. "Do you think we'll really achieve what you talked about today? Making ourselves unnecessary?" Marcus watched the little girl carefully arrange her toy cars in neat rows, then crash them together with delighted giggles. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know that she's growing up in a world where programs like ours exist, where she'll learn that helping others is normal and expected. Maybe she'll be part of the generation that doesn't need us anymore." Picked up one of the toy cars and handed it to the little girl. "Or maybe she'll be a mechanic someday, carrying on the tradition in ways we can't even imagine yet." The circle that had started with Joe helping Marcus's mother, that had expanded through Marcus helping Sarah, that had grown through Robert Chen's business partnership and the Pay It Forward Fund was now so large it encompassed hundreds of communities and thousands of people. But it was still at its core about the same simple truth that had started it all. When you have the ability to help someone, you help them, and you ask them to do the same for someone else when they can.